This meeting is
There
being
he
recorded.
is. Here he is. How are we, Joe? We good?
I'm good, buddy. How about you?
I'm well. I'm well. Same as you. I think I'm heavily caffeinated. I'm just chugging like the third one in an hour. Yeah, mate. I'm on a little bit of like a cycle at the minute because of the hot weather. I haven't been sleeping great, so I've been caffeinating to get through the day, and I don't sleep great. So I'm in that, and I'm probably never going to leave.
Yeah, for me, I'm especially having a newborn and stuff like that. Having the caffeine regularly, I quickly recognize how addicted I am to it, and I've had to taper off a little bit and I've tried to have at least maximum 2 cups a day, but it gets to like 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'm not
I'd
really
be a
feeling
zombie,
it.
mate. I'd be a zombie. I wouldn't be able to function. And it's so bad, isn't it? Like that is probably the definition of addiction: the fact that you have a pure dependency on that thing. But it's nice. It's nice, mate.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. Terrific.
It's true. Sweet. So, just before we kind of get into the meat and veg of it, mate, how about you tell me and some of the listeners who you are, where you are, what you've been doing, all those things.
Yeah, so name's Joe Gurley. Come from Birmingham, Alabama, as the Brits would say. They'd say Birmingham, but we say Birmingham where I'm from. Yeah, so currently been living in the UK for 2 years now. Currently serve as a strength and conditioning coach for the basketball academy at Myers Co. I offer remote strength and conditioning for an alpine ski team called Excel Race Academy. And currently, but that's due to change, I'm doing a role as a lecturer in strength and conditioning. Prior to the roles I'm currently in, I served in the private sector it was kind of a franchise business called D1 Training. Was a head coach for like director of performance. I hate that title, but was over that for 2 years. And then prior to that, had some stints in universities, in college basketball and golf at University of Alabama at Birmingham, so UAB, and did some internships here and there with some key mentors. But yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
That's you. That's you. How you finding being in the UK? Big change?
It's been yeah, pretty massive change. I think because I moved over during COVID. I moved right in the middle of lockdown. It was a bit bleak to say the least, but I'm finding it well. I think I guess it's one of those. If you're British and the idea of moving to America is probably like, wow, that'd be amazing to live in America. Well, the idea for Americans living in Europe or abroad is kind of like, wow, that's amazing. But I'm just taking it one day at a time. It's a really cool journey and really good experience at this point.
It's classic. I love that moving to Europe thing. Like there's such a difference as well between like Milan or Doncaster. I don't know if you've been to Doncaster yet in the UK.
No.
Don't bother. Don't bother. Yeah, that's sick, mate. That's sick. I was thinking earlier, like trying to piece together how we actually know each other. Like, so obviously, I remember us speaking when I was at Warwick, and we were chatting over Zoom or something like that. But I can't remember how you reached out because this is in your kind of transition period, I believe.
Yes. So at the time, my wife, it's always been a dream of hers to move back to the UK. I don't know whether it's permanent, forever, whatever the case may be, but it was always like a goal of her to move back, of us to move back. So I was in full support of that. So I then said, well, in order for us to do that, I've got to get into coaching. I've got to do something because like that's like to me it's a non-negotiable. Like it's what I love to do. So anything else we could live, whatever the case may be, that's what I want to do. So I started looking online and looking at like institutes of sport, and I saw where there was Warwick Institute of Sport. And it said, like, because you were there at the time, I think it's the Jordan Webster, Director of Strength and Conditioning. And you guys were looking for, I think, a casual strength coach or something. So I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was just trying to see what I could make work from my view. So I just contacted you directly, and we scheduled like a Zoom, and it was during lockdown, and yeah, that's kind of how we started. And we started talking about your internship at Pepperdine, and
Yeah,
started
true.
talking about America and the coaching journey and stuff. And then
Yeah,
Well, I think,
that's it.
yeah.
It's clear now. It's clear. I was fully. I just had a blank, mate. I can remember us just being on Zoom, and I was thinking it was like this weird, like Tinder for strength coaches type vibe. And now we're here. Now we speak often. Probably speak more through memes than actual words. I feel like that's our relationship.
Well, to be honest, that's the main reason I'm there for Instagram. If I
Yeah,
want a good laugh, there's nothing wrong with 10 minute scroll. Well, then you get kind of trapped in that little
you're trapped.
vortex, and you're there for 30 minutes just looking at memes.
Mate, I think one of the best things to do, because obviously the memes that you send to other people, you obviously really, really like and find funny. But if you just go through your chats with other people, it's amazing because every single one of those ones you're sending is gold and it's perfect. Like you've finessed the formula already. And if you've got a bad memory like me, it's the first time again. It's quality.
Yes, yes. No,
So
exactly.
talk to me around the differences then from an S&C standpoint that you've kind of observed. So you've been in the UK for 2 years now. Things are a little bit different from my eyes, from my experience of Pepperdine. I'll just leave it open. What are some of the differences? What are some of the things you do well that we don't, that we do well that you do, and all that?
Gosh, when you sent me a text yesterday about that was what we were going to discuss, it's a really difficult question to answer because I'm only basing it off of what I've seen in my environment. So I can't really, I'm sure that, there's going to be different ends of the spectrum of things you'll see. But for me, I think where the US has done a great job is creating opportunities at every level, from grassroots to private to just across the board. It just seems like there are more opportunities, but I think that's because it's such a large country. You can't forget that. So, and I think the UK is slowly catching up to that, where it's like, okay, and I think John Noonan, I think you had him on your podcast previously, and I think he's really hammered that about private sector, really doing that. I think the US has done that for such a long time because you've had your personal trainers that call them strength coaches. That's a whole other topic. But I think that's a big difference is in America, at least it's got that business approach of how do we monetize what we do in terms of training people. I think in the UK, based off wage discrepancies, and I know it's probably the best telltale sign of a massive difference, but noticing what the salaries are in like professional football, rugby, and you're seeing what that wage is relative to what it is to be paid to be a strength coach at a high school in the US.
What in which way? So who's getting more there?
I guess it's difficult because Pacey Performance, like Rob's podcast. I remember he put out a survey and there were some football professionals that posted what their wage was anonymously, but I'm sure there were a lot of coaches that did not post it because they probably were making six figures and didn't want anybody knowing. But there are strength coaches in American high school that are making $70,000 a year, like in Texas, to do that. I don't know what the currency exchange is. Maybe that's like 50,000 pounds a year.
Yeah, I reckon maybe 50-ish.
So that's a pretty large difference in the money. And now that's money side of things. In terms of what I think the UK does very, very well is you guys really value, for what it's worth, what research is able to provide, what information is out there, the multidisciplinary team of you have a sport scientist, you have, like
a nutritionist, a performance analysis. Yeah,
whatever the case may be. There seems to be that kind of immersed in, into the environment in the UK. In the US, it's definitely getting there, but I think that's a pretty big discrepancy difference. And also, now this is just based off the environments I've been in, but I feel like a lot of coaches in the UK that I've come across, they end up being research junkies and like it's paralysis by analysis with coaching strategies where, and I know a lot of people, British coaches I've spoken to, make fun of it, but like in America, there's the guys with the whistles that blow the whistles for cadence of repetitions. And I don't necessarily agree with that, But there is something to appreciate in the U.S. where the art of coaching and running a room and the leadership side of things tends to be very well developed. Not saying it's not done here, but I've just seen it done better in the U.S. Now, if I came to watch your sessions or somebody else's, my opinion may completely change. But just based off what I've seen at this point, I would say that's probably the biggest difference. I probably missed a few things there, but that's what I would say.
I think that's a huge point, what you was kind of mentioning around the leadership and controlling the room and the flow of the room and just generally how that all feels like. And again, my experience at Pepperdine might not be the same for every college and high school in the US, but it seemed like such a huge part of the way they prepared the session, you know. And before each session, we'd have like a 10-minute meeting where the coaches would speak to me, one of the interns, and some of the others, and basically say, look, this is your role during the session. This is your thing. I want to smash that thing, you know, and over time they'd change that responsibility. They'd kind of get you rotating. And if I think I've been part of 3 internships in the UK, and that hasn't been anywhere close to the experience I've had. It just doesn't get mentioned, you know, like the softer skills of coaching, and it just doesn't really get a listening. It's my thoughts anyway.
No, and then to even add on to that, I think that if you could swap qualities that are taken from each, the UK and the US, especially in like American football systems, and it's slowly changing because now there's becoming an appreciation of speed development. I mean, over the last, not that it's never been there, but it's almost like there's now a bit more of an emphasis, not maximal strength.
Mm-hmm.
But the data science over here, if you could just flip it, I wish that the amount of data influence and at least monitoring and measuring things extensively, I wish that would be totally adopted in the U.S. And I wish I would see more. I'm not saying rah-rah type coaches, because I know you know what I'm talking about when I mean rah-rah coaches, people yelling and screaming and blowing whistle. I don't like that, but I would love for the intensity of the coaching from the U.S. be brought here and how things are done. But the data science is a touchy subject because, you know, then it's paralysis by analysis through measurement. But you still get a lot of coaches in America saying, well, you know, we need them to squat bigger, faster, stronger. Well, bigger, faster, stronger doesn't always win, right? But it helps.
Yeah, for sure. It's such an interesting topic, you know, and I think you can even go. You've got like the sports scientist and the sports science guy and like the personal trainer. You know, they're kind of two continuums or 2 avenues that people usually end up going towards S&C in the UK. You know, and I think they both have really strong benefits. The PT might not be as kind of research applied or understand the principles, but are really good people, you know, and can just get a session done. Sports scientist can probably write you down a really effective program, but can't coach you for shit. You know, and I always find it interesting where people come from, you know, and I think sometimes you just have to kind of go back and forth on that pendulum for your own development. Because I was definitely more of a PT. And might even still be, I don't know, but I'm learning the science, and that's becoming more and more in my practice as I get better, you know, and develop, I guess.
Do you find that, this is a question for you though, do you find that when it comes to coaching sessions, I have found personally that I could read all sorts of books and continue professional development and still develop my knowledge. But if you're not great at communicating with kids, people, and I still work on that to this day. I mean, there's sometimes I leave a session where I feel like, you know what, I probably was a little too ruthless to that player, whatever the case may be. And then I actually try to do the human thing and apologize and say, hey, listen, here's why I was hard on you. But I guess the root of my question is, do you find that you find yourself trying to improve your soft skills of communicating more than you do your textbook knowledge, like on a day-to-day basis with people you work with?
That is a good question. Fuck, you got me. You know what? I feel I feel like the reading and the research and all those types of things, I think over the last 2 years since I've been more self-employed, has probably been more people orientated, research. So the softer skills, thinking about marketing, thinking about psychology and all those things. And, I'll be honest, it hasn't always been how to run a session better or anything like that. I think I've definitely been delving more into, the marketing and psychology behind business. And I think I'm obviously a little bit more involved in the social media game, and as a result of trying to put content out there, I've had to stay on top of research and think about those things a little bit more often, and it's hard. I would say, if I had to put an answer down, I've probably been more towards the human side than the sprint mechanics or whatever recently. But then I think that's just kind of a little bit of an evolution of a coach. I think you go through waves of, picking up the weakness. What is the non-acceptable weakness at that time, and then you try and develop that. And then there's something else that you're thinking, right, we need to bring that up again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, most definitely. The in terms of the soft skills too, like I find that, and I've got, I'm very lucky. I get to work with some great coaches on a day-to-day basis, sport coaches here at the college, and the head coach of the program, he's set up a really, really good situation in terms of allowing me to thrive as a coach. I mean, it's a really good. I mean, I can't complain about it at all, but it's so funny. Like I've really tried, because I'm like you. In any case, you're going to want to find holes in your development to try to fill those up and improve. And I used to be the type of coach that would, anytime a head coach would say, well, this is what I want, whatever. And I would just try to be a foot soldier. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But now what I've tried to do is I've really tried to develop those soft skills of communication with a head coach. And, there are times like I've tried to, show some knowledge I have about, a certain thing I've read on, and, hey, listen, this is how we can make the program better, the academy. And, sometimes coaches, they're the head of the program, so they're going to say what they want. And that's really tough because, as you know, we look at our job as, it's very influential, impactful. But I've slowly gotten away from reading like strength and conditioning textbooks. I've slowly gone towards this spectrum of, okay, what coaching development are they doing that I'm missing in translation here? Like, because you and I both know, if you told a coach, his acceleration needs to improve, and a coach says, oh, well, his foot speed needs to improve, both losing conversation, because one's saying foot speed, one's saying acceleration, but you both could be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Just different
for sure.
verbiage. So it's dealing with head coaches is difficult, but I absolutely love the challenge, because I look at it as, I'm not trying to make my job important. I'm just trying to help you make your job better. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's kind of a ramble.
No, I agree, mate. I think it's that managing up as well as managing down thing. I think as an S&C coach, you are sometimes going to be the head of the program, because you might not have a head coach. It might be a voluntary coach or somebody that isn't necessarily overseeing the sport itself. And I find myself in that situation quite a lot at the moment, because I work with athletes one-on-one, and we don't always have somebody to kind of feed into, right, we need, Greg to be better at this thing. And it's usually rugby, actually. I think rugby is one of the areas that I struggle to get a good connection, or any connection with the coaches. Maybe that's something I need to work on. I don't know. It's usually just the fact that they don't reply, to be honest with you. But I think, I find myself in that situation a lot, and I'm lucky at the moment, because I've got a few like roles where I do have somebody overseeing me I have two different people actually that are kind of questioning what I do, and are asking for results, and there's no way of getting around that. You've either got the results or you haven't, and they want to know why you're doing certain things, and they will push back. And that, I think that's a great thing, because you don't get lazy, you don't overlook certain things. And so I think it's kind of that managing up and managing down thing. And we never got taught this in university. I don't know if that was part of your kind of degree or anything like that.
No, I mean, because I was very fortunate to go because I really wanted. I mean, in the U.S., the degree system is not. I mean, in my opinion, it's not great. Only because, well, it benefits. Well, I guess depending on the way you look at it, it could work well for whoever, depending on who you ask. But for me, I knew from the minute I went to school, I wanted to do. I want to study to be a physio, a physical therapist, a strength coach. I want to do one of those things. So I knew right away, but you have to do 2 years of core curriculum, like math, English, all that nonsense.
Mm.
And then you do 2 years. So for me, I felt like I didn't even earn the right to have an exercise science degree. So then I go and get a master's at Edith Cowan.
Mm.
And to be honest, that was amazing program. And there's lots of really, really good master's degrees out there. And I'm sure you have gone to a good program and stuff. But we talked about all the stuff that really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter as much as we want to say it does.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about all these different periodization schemes and all these different, and in the real world, like if a coach says all you've got is 30 minutes,
True.
you're going to have to deal with that. And then I wish, I think Brett Bartholomew's done a great job with his conscious coaching book and stuff, but I wish I was taught in my master's degree. I wish we were taught about, I don't know, communication skills being one with difficult, and just almost like public speaking, but in the coaching context. And two, I would say, how to manage a business, or
Mm.
like the private sector side of it. I wish there was a private sector module or something, because the master's degrees, I feel like, and they're great, but I feel like, and they're always changing, but I feel like they're built for you to work in like an institution, not
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'd be my
And I think with that
thought.
as well, like in the UK, definitely in an institution, but I think it's very geared towards elite sport. There's little modules and there's little bits that you may touch on, like the elderly, disabled, or youth, but it is very much geared around probably this Russian ideal that everybody is a 200-pound track and field athlete. That was my kind of thoughts from it. And it just, I thought there was gaps. I definitely thought there was gaps. And just building on what you said around the communication skills, like dealing with conflict, being able to put forward a comprehensive argument and debate and those types of things. Those are some of the things that I wish I had more of, for sure.
No, it's funny you mentioned about the debates and conflict, because I think sometimes if it comes from the heart and you're not being aggressive and you're not being, I don't know, communication is such a weird one, because,
Mm.
like for instance, and I love the coaches I work with, and obviously there's always going to be issues, but I presented an idea on ways in which we could gain strength, better. And I presented, talking about the conflict thing, I presented a paper that talked about, and I just explained the premise of it. And it's out of Paul Comfort's book that he had. And it was like, if you lift weights, there was like two groups in rugby. One group lifted before training, one group lifted after training. Same thing. Both saw strength gains. One saw, I think it was like 15% strength over 8 weeks. And then the one that lifted after only saw like 3%, whatever the case may be.
Mm.
So I presented to him. I was like, hey, listen, I think we can get the guys stronger if it's before. Well, as you know, it's great to present an idea, but sometimes the coach just doesn't, in his mission and in his vision from a cultural standpoint,
Mm.
he wants it a certain way. And sometimes I think strength coaches get their tail tucked between their legs and think, oh, well, this job is garbage. This is this, because coach doesn't want to listen, yada, yada, yada. Well, for me, when he said, well, you still can get 3%, so why are we talking about 3 to 15? Still getting stronger, right? And I'm like, right. So,
Mm.
yeah, so let's just continue lifting them after practice. So sometimes you got to take it on the chin. And for me, I wasn't trying to win a battle of what I want. I was trying to give him information as to what could help. But
Yeah.
I think as strength coaches, we got to remember that our coach's job is to develop the players to then hopefully, especially at our college, develop players to then hopefully get a scholarship to play basketball or to
Mm-hmm.
go on playing or involved in coaching elsewhere. It's not really about them being amazing weightlifters. So
Yeah.
I had to really think about that. I was like, well, from his perspective, I understand. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But I'm trying to present him with something better. And sometimes you lose battles.
For sure. And I think that kind of what you said there, like you wasn't too butthurt about it because it's not something that you're heavily invested in. It's not like I need to win this. It's not an ego thing for you. It's literally just a look, my job is to try and make kids better. And this is how I think it could do. And you do with what information you want. But yeah, I think that's the other side of S&C in a nutshell, isn't it? We try and chase those physical qualities, and like we kind of mentioned before, that doesn't win sport always. We're not trying to make them the world's best S&C athletes. Sometimes it might be we might be able to put more into that. We might be able to chase more basketball. It might be a case of like, you know what, they're not training this week because they haven't done the homework. We've had that situation. It's like, well, you don't play basketball, you don't lift until you do your BTEC.
No, 100%, 100%.
It
Yeah.
happens. So give us a little bit of thoughts around just from the physical prep standpoint, because you've been working in basketball a long while, and this is a relatively new sport for me. I'm curious, like how you're kind of approaching, because our athletes will be somewhat similar. You know, there's going to be some differences, obviously, but how are you kind of approaching it? What's your thought process with your guys?
Good question. I think being specialized in a sport can have its problems and its good things at times, like understanding the game culturally. In terms of my approach, if you ask me when I was in college basketball, how the approach was get them prepared, fitter, faster, stronger, more robust to win games, because winning games yielded more money or yielded, so that's then that builds the hierarchical, idea of what your philosophy is, like how you go about
Mm-hmm.
doing that. But from my perspective, coming here, I've always wanted to build just culturally kids that train, creating that culture of wanting to show up. And I know this sounds so American, but that culture to want to show up and train very, very hard, be disciplined. That's probably the root of my philosophy with these kids, because I think a lot of kids don't know how to be coached hard. They don't know how to handle adversity. They don't know how to handle being uncomfortable. And I think the root of our job is to create better functioning adults. And I've taken that from a mentor of mine when I first started interning. That it's not really about the weight that's on the bar; it's about improving them as humans. So for me, that's the root of my philosophy. Now, in terms of physical prep, we've all been through this. I mean, you were the same way, Jordan. You probably started off thinking, oh yeah, strength and conditioning, yeah, whatever, and then you get in this build up where you're like, okay, let's try all this new stuff, FRC, let's try all this stuff here, and then you come to the other side, it's like the basics win, like that Yoda wisdom moment.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, nothing you haven't seen from a strength and conditioning perspective. Teaching them how to squat, hinge, all your basic fundamental movement patterns. But I guess where did you want to go with that question from the philosophy side? Because I feel like that's probably a
It's
very
huge, isn't
basic
it?
thing that everybody sees. Yeah.
No. What I guess for your guys then, how are you in terms of your training phases and those types of things? Like, are you approaching it from like a concurrent vertical integration type thing? Are you kind of chasing linear? Is it different for different people, or is everyone on the same program with little adjustments? Those types of things I'm curious about.
So one thing I toyed with last year, I think that's what's cool about younger kids, which we can get in at another stage about late matures and early matures and that type of stuff. But for me last year, I want to toy with something because they're getting so much of the capacity in the spectrum, all the conditioning, endurance. They're playing all the time. I mean, so for me, I just block periodized it where we did 3 weeks of strength, 3 weeks of power, 3 weeks of strength, 3 weeks of power. And I just did that for the year, and they improved. I don't know if it was like the most effective way at making them more developed, but based off what I read and who coaches I've spoken to, most of the time, whatever you do with kids, they develop and improve and get stronger over time. So for me, that was how I periodized my training with them. Was I just periodized it that way? It just made sense. Now from planning perspective, if we want to talk about like plyometrics, which is kind of immersed in this, and I just took this influence from Boo, because they're doing so much low amplitude jumping, like very low, jumps, low level jumping activities all the time. The base is already there for the plyos. So for me, if you look at a lot of the coach education out there, they'll talk about, after they do this, okay, then we do this and we do, I feel like stress is stress, however you elicit that on kids. So for me, I just go on the other end of the spectrum, and we'll do like, different hurdle hop variations, or like continuous jumping, or we'll do like drop jumps, step jumps, like your more intense jumps. And I know that probably goes against your, most strength conditioning knowledge, which is, okay, they can't do drop jumps or depth jumps till they squat 2.5 times their body weight, or whatever the case may be. But, what about parkour athletes who are doing that all the time?
Yeah, exactly, mate. I think that's a really interesting point, because that's been one of the questions that I've been pondering, and it's plagued me a little bit. So I came into the Sheffield Elite program basically at the end of their season, so my ability to make any kind of long-term change wasn't really there. I kind of just got brought in to make the transition period into next season a little bit easier. And I was like, right, how do we go about this? So I went down the route of essentially what you said you don't do, so I was doing a little bit more of the lower intensity things, trying to build that resiliency, tendon tissue, all that stuff that we know the benefits. And, we can never assume that it was because of that was what I was doing. So I gradually built it up over time, but we started getting knees. But I think we already had some knees going on, like jumper's knee, all that stuff. And I'm like, it's super hard to know whether me doing that was the issue, whether there's other things going on. But I like the thought that you've kind of attacked it from a different standpoint of going, high intensity, lower volume.
But if I'm being honest, Jordan, I mean, if you want to talk about, I think strength coaches, sometimes we're the bane of our own existence. We think we know everything about stuff, and we try to show that we know. I'll be honest, when it comes to periodization and planning, or periodization and knowing those different things, it's probably a very weak point of mine. But from looking at stressors throughout a week, I just feel like sometimes, there's a plan, and then there's what the coach is doing throughout the year. So for instance, like one thing I know for a fact, first 4 to 6 weeks, when we come back in September, we're going to have tendon pain. We're going to have, because of the acute spike in load, we're going to have problems. So, and then coming after Christmas, 4 to 6 weeks, same thing, same problems. So that also throws a dent in your planning and preparation, because in a strength coach's world, you're like, okay, I need to get them doing these things in those 4 to 6 weeks. But then it totally changes how you even look at periodization, because then it's like, well, if I can't really train them because they're just hammered from all this stress, what can I do that's safe for them? Yeah. But I guess back to the root of your question in terms of planning for the guys, Dan Paff's presentation was very, very helpful to me. And when I've spoken to him twice, and he's difficult to get in touch with for obvious reasons, because he's a wanted man. But he gave me the most simple planning periodization advice that I took seriously from then on. That was like 3 years ago when we caught up. He said, look at the force velocity curve. Where does your sport sit on the force velocity curve? what injuries are associated with your sport within that force velocity curve. Okay. Then start to, what's the word? Unravel what can help improve athletic performance for these athletes, but also tick the box for reducing the risk of injury. So from there, then planning of training, I think, becomes a bit easier. Let's be real. Basketball players are inherently just weak individuals because they don't train. They're always on the court. So it's no sin to be strong.
For sure. Like that, I think that was probably one of my biggest biggest weaknesses, or the things that I overlooked coming into this into that program, is I just did not know how much time they spent on the court. I knew how much time the basketball coaches had them on the court, but I didn't know that they would play 10 hours on a weekend of pickup, and never stop that. Like, I just did not know. So as soon as I found that out, I was like, well, maybe my extensive, circuits for plyos is actually a bad idea. I don't know. But yeah, questions on questions on questions, isn't it? Like, who is doing the right thing? And we're giving them 2 hours of stimulus in a week, but they've got 150 hours outside of those 2 hours to fuck it all up potentially. So
no, of course. What were you going to say, Jordan? Sorry.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things, like one of the solutions I think I've kind of made so far, and might be a solution, it might be a bad thing, is we've kind of rejigged our training schedule. And I can remember speaking to you about this before. I'm quite lucky with the coaches that we've got at Sheffield League, because they buy into the S+C a lot, and they want to know my opinion around training load management and all those things. So they said, right, if you had the say of the week, where would you put your S&C sessions? And then they've essentially tried to build their basketball program around that, which may or may not be a good thing. Obviously, they need to play basketball, so I took that into account when I put this together. But they've also managed to get because they study, I think they study 5 days a week alongside it, Monday to Friday. So they've managed to actually get the timetable to work with that, which has been amazing. And yeah, we used to have a Monday and Tuesday S&C session. Obviously, we'd play on a Wednesday. They'd play on the weekends. So I've managed to kind of rejig it so it's a little bit more balanced. They don't necessarily get huge periods of time off, but we can definitely structure high and low days.
Here's a question for you that I think about all the time is, in terms of training, like, and I know we get caught up trying to do all these things, and we almost try to be too wise for a lot of cases, but I was thinking about this the other day on a walk. If basketball players, if all you did was throughout the weeks and the year, if all you did was like some very intense in certain pockets of the year, some very intense jump sessions, like drop jumps, depth jumps, and then you did like some type of, on the force end of the spectrum, if you did some type of trap bar deadlift, some type of heavy squat, and then you did sprints and some level of upper body development, and like chin-ups. Really and truly, I really don't know that they need more than that. I think, like, when you look at the coach education stuff, like we were talking about a minute ago, we create so many exercises, and understand that it's for, if you're in coach education, you want to have a business and you want people to be like, oh my God, like, he has a million different variations for a certain exercise. But in reality, we don't need all that. If we're being completely honest.
For sure. I think it's, you can get super simple with this, can't you? Like, what is the adaptation you're trying to create? Okay, well, based off your equipment and, their restrictions from a mobility or a movement perspective, what are the best 3 options? And just pick them. If it's upper body pressing, you're probably going to pick a bench press, a dumbbell, or a single, or whatever that is, and just rotate. You've got 3 exercises there. Do a 12-week block of chasing strength, then power, change the exercise. I think about our training, like, you'll probably be similar. How old are you, Joe?
28.
28, same as me. So I've been training 10 years now, and my sessions look so similar to what they did when I first started. There's changes in structure, like the way I structure the week and potentially some of the rep ranges and set ranges, but I still bench, I still do some incline, I still go overhead, I still squat and I hinge and a single leg. Like, and we're doing all right. You know, I'm a shit athlete, but I'm doing all right from a strength and a power perspective.
No, 100%. Yeah, from my training perspective, to be honest, when I was at UAB doing strength conditioning in basketball, there was a strength coach that was there. He squatted, I think it was 500 pounds, like 15 times or something crazy like that. And he was over the basketball, and he's a very, very good friend of mine, still to this day. And I was like, dude, I want to be built like a fire truck. And so I was, at the time, I don't know what it would be in kilos, but I was weighing like 198. Currently, I weigh probably 182. So I was a bit bigger.
Yeah.
But I really chased being so strong, training through pain and all that stuff. And then I ended up hurting myself. And then you kind of, I don't know, I've come on the other end of it, and I've just been like, you know what? I'll train, I'm going to train these movements because I got to teach them. But if I feel any twinge, I'm not doing it. I'm not finishing it. I'm moving on. And I mean, I know we're only 28, Jordan, but it's machines are a man's best friend. Machines are a man's best friend.
Absolutely, mate. Like I've joined a different gym from the one that I usually coach out of specifically for that, because I need machines. Like, I just value it so much. Like, it gives me something that
Jordan,
free weight
being
doesn't.
honest, you probably, looking at your arms, you probably stay on the preacher curl machine, don't you?
Yeah, maybe so. I'm gonna hide, mate. Get these sleeves longer. But yeah, it's a true one, mate. I think that continuum of like how you progress through things. I was a machine guy when I first started as well. Then I stopped doing them when I got into S&C, and now I'm a machine guy again, but a little bit more balanced. But mate, I think it's just like the timeline, isn't it? We all kind of go through phases.
Oh, 100%. I feel like training was most fun when all we wanted to do was just look jack tan and like look like a bodybuilder. I feel like training was the most fun when we train like bodybuilders. At least that's, I mean, you know what I'm saying. Like when I first started lifting weights at 18, it was like really trying to lift weights. That was, yeah, I feel like I was just in every bodybuilder magazine trying to just chase the pump.
Yeah, I'm still there. I think I'm still there, to be fair. So I want to shift gears a little bit, Joe. So talk to me a little bit around kind of where you're heading at the moment then. So you've just had a kid. How old is it's a girl, right?
Yeah. So she's my gosh, she's 9 weeks old.
Wow, high
9 weeks old. Man, it to say the least. It's sorry, 1 second, just hooking up my so it doesn't die. It's great, man. I think trying to say it, just sum it up in just a small sentence, but I think that being a dad might be the best coaching job ever. I know she's little and there's not much coaching you're really doing, but it's by far the most rewarding thing, because I think if you don't have children, I'm not saying everybody should have kids any kind, but when Christy first told me that we were having a baby, I was shocked, and I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm losing freedom or whatever that's supposed to mean, but that definitely was not the case. And I think it's if you think you're a hungry individual and you have drive, turn that up another 10 times, because I mean, I'm more than I've ever been as a result of having a little one. So it's amazing.
Sorry, mate. I think I've lost you a little bit there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What was that?
So I believe the last thing you said was essentially just like having a kid kind of turns up your drive quite a lot, in terms of like how driven and motivated you are. Hello, mate. We're just experiencing some difficulties at the minute, but this is all right. If you can hear me, we'll just kind of wait for it to settle down a second, then I can edit this out, so that'll be all right. Yes, mate.
Sorry about that, buddy. I don't know what happened there.
No, all good. All good. What we'll do, mate, if I just re-kick us off with that question, I'll just edit out the gap, if that's all right.
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. So you might have to repeat yourself, see where you end up. But yeah, so I want to shift gears a little bit, Joe. Talk me through kind of what's going on with your life at the moment. Like you've just had a newborn. You said is she 9 weeks?
9 weeks old. Yeah. 9 weeks
old. How are you finding
it? It's crazy. I think we, we've spoken a little bit about this in prior weeks when I told you that it had the newborn, but man, it's the best coaching job ever, to be quite honest with you. I know there's not much coaching happening outside of changing nappies and trying to keep her entertained, but it's amazing. I think not everybody wants to have kids, but I will say this: it turned my motivation up 10 times as a person, as a coach, and it's just changed. It's really put things into perspective and really grounded you because, I don't know, it quickly turns into what's best for me, but what's going to be the best situation to give me the most time with my child. And I think that really, especially in strength and conditioning, it really brings you down to earth. I'm sure other fields, but in this case, we're talking about as a strength and conditioner. So, yeah.
It's, I've heard that so many times around having a kid and how it gives you perspective. And one of the guests I had on the podcast a few weeks ago, Gary Hupp, he works at GB Boxing, and he literally said the same thing. It's like one of the best CPD things you can do for coaching is having a kid. Obviously, there's probably easier ways, less expensive ways of getting good at coaching. But he said, like, nothing challenges you more than when your 3-year-old does not want to leave the supermarket because she wants some chocolate, and you've got to try and battle that and communicate that and all those different things. But, and I think he kind of mentioned around that same thing of, okay, it's no longer about being the best S+C coach only. There's more things going on in your life that are more important, and you've got to try and take the best of everything. I'm guessing that resonates with you.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, hopefully time doesn't fly that quick in terms of her shooting a 3 already, because it's pretty amazing watching her grow. And I think that you're absolutely right. There's definitely less expensive ways of getting better at coaching or becoming more motivated. But I think as a field, relating it back to our field, a lot of coaches, like, what blows my mind to me, and, this is not to attack coaches that do this, but because, all power to them. But, whenever I go to work or to train myself or whatever, I'm thinking about, I'm losing 2 hours to spend time with her, stare at her, as funny as that sounds, kind of watch her, play with her toys and stuff while she's laying on the ground with a little bit she can do. But I could not be a full-time strength coach in pro sport, whatever the case may be, and not be able to come home all the time, because I feel like, time is precious and no job is going to give you more time. So you got to make the most of the time you are given. So it's changed the way I look at jobs. It's changed the way I look at where I want to be in 10 years. It's changed the way, I mean, gosh, it's really, yeah, it's just changed everything. In many ways.
Is that kind of, so we haven't really spoke around the lecturing thing then. So this a new role for you? When do you go? Is this going to be full time? Are you doing this alongside Myers Co? What's going on there?
So at Myers Co, I was in a lecturing role in strength conditioning, but still waiting on the official signing of papers. But this new role is going to be teaching in like physical education for a university, and it's going to be remote based, which will be very, very good. But that kind of came with good timing. And I think that, I mean, you and I talk about this regularly about, really making your CV extensive and making it broad. And I think that if I could go back, which I wouldn't change anything now because it's worked out, hasn't it? But if I could go back, I would have, tried to go in a lab, and meet people that do research, even if at the time I thought it was boring. I would have asked, what it's like teaching, teaching pedagogy. I would have talked about those things, because ultimately most strength coaches, I mean, we don't really have much of a choice. If it's not private sector, like what you do, kind of, if it's not full-time with a sports team or an institution, it's teaching, or it's personal training, or it's research. So if you want a good lifestyle, you have to be willing to do any one of those, even if sometimes it's not the most glamorous.
For sure, mate. And it feeds into that. I'm sure you're going to be thinking about the future now you've had a kid, and you probably, I know you was thinking about the future beforehand, but are we going to be 65, 70-year-old S+C coaches? Am I still going to be on Instagram, pushing adapt when I'm 72? Like, is it going to, I don't know, I doubt it. But what is next then? How am I transitioning to that next thing? And I think that is why lecturing does seem so appealing. You can do it when your body breaks down. You can still coach. It's a different type of coaching, particularly if you end up doing some practical stuff as well. The pension system in the UK, I don't know if do you get a pension as a somebody that comes over?
Yes, I do.
You do?
I do.
Yeah, so the pension system in like education is pretty good, particularly if you kind of stick in it for a long while. So there is a lot of benefits, and I can see why people do transition towards that. So is that a full-time thing, or is that going to be part-time?
It'll technically be full-time. It's a pretty full-on timetable, just close to a full-time status as you can make it. But I'm still going to coach. I'm still going to do my stuff with the ski team. I'm still going to do the basketball S+C here. But
that's cool.
I mean, it's just one of those. I think what I disliked about lecturers in school was that they would talk about stuff, but it wasn't real world. And then you had strength coaches that would just, say, well, that study's worthless, right? I kind of wanted to look at it from, I want to be the guy that does the actual stuff, coaching, and does, lab-based, well, not lab-based, because I want to do a prof doc, which means applied coaching research. But yeah, I just think it's so important. I think it's just good to have that three-headed monster, the coaching, the understanding of research and applied practice, and knowing how to teach people. I think, though, that three-headed monster is very important in our field. Well, if you want to talk about a four-headed monster, to be knowing business and how to monetize what you do.
I think what you said there resonates a lot. Like having lecturers that, if I think back to my degree, if I think back to university, school, like I probably had like maybe three teachers or lecturers that I can name straight away who I think, okay, you kind of changed it for me because you were super passionate. I could tell you was applied, and you just knew how to connect with people. I can remember one of my favorite lecturers I've ever had is called Dave Rogerson, and he works at Sheffield Hallam University. And he's done a PhD. He's a nutrition guy, but an S&C guy. He's just He is the full package. But the way he connected with you as a person was mad. Like, wasn't afraid to swear or drop a C-bomb in a lecture. But at the same time would be stood at the front, going through a PowerPoint, and he'd just cock his leg up and get into a pigeon pose. And it's just like, he was just so out there. But I think it just connected with me really well because he was a normal person, not just this lab person. It was mad, but it stuck with me really well.
No, gosh, yeah, I can think of a few as well. It's weird though, because you tend to learn the most. What's weird to me is, and I know you, because you still do some teaching for Sheffield Hallam, don't you, a little bit?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But gosh, it's so funny now that I've gone through, I'm nearly done with the PGC. I got one more year. But what I love is it's so valuable because we're being taught how to teach, taught how to organize lessons, taught how to organize, which to me, I'm like, this would be very valuable if I ever, not that like it doesn't really matter to me necessarily, but if I was ever asked to speak at a clinic or something, I know how to run a lesson that works.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you and I both know, we've been to strength conditioning clinics and we've watched a presentation, and we're sat back like this and we're like, what in the hell are we getting out of this? Like what you could tell it's probably not the most well organized. You can tell the coach is someone who's never taught before, but is used to coaching in a weight room, has made this presentation.
Mm-hmm. The parallels between teaching and coaching, they're so similar, aren't they? And I think there's a lot of gaps in between for sure. So what I guess moving forward then, just for some of the listeners, what are you thinking is going to be next for you? So you're obviously going to be teaching, you're going to be coaching. It's that hard question because I guess you're clinging on to every day. You want to keep the baby young. You want to experience that and not let it get away. But what are you thinking the future looks like for you?
So my plan is to start a prof doc. I'm kind of starting that. I've been doing it for probably the last year or two because I think your PhD research starts when you start asking questions, reading things. That's when that journey really begins. So commencing that and rolling in January. But for me, I want to be a lecturer at a university. I want to still offer some type of coaching in an academy setting. Would love for it to still be here, obviously, at Myers Co. But whatever the case may be, you can't write, what the future is. I'm sure there's time travel out there that could, but for me, that's lecturing at a university, still offering some type of coaching at an academy setting. I don't have any really desire to be in high level, whatever high level means, like first team stuff. I really like youth, like that youth development phase. I really like that young group, and doing applied coaching research. That's kind of where I see myself long term. It's weird, probably for you, and I know that was your question, was where do I see myself going? But oftentimes when we first got in this field, and when we first showed interest in this field, whether we realize it or not, it comes back full circle. Like when I was 14 going into high school, this is going to sound so funny. I wanted to be a history teacher in high school, and I wanted to coach basketball. Well, because basketball was obviously what really got me into the strength and conditioning, but funny how it's come full circle. I want to coach, but I want to teach. So, and that's been nearly 15 years, going on 15 years. And I've come right back to where the root of the love is. And I'm sure you could say something similar.
Yeah. It's funny that I think, mine's been a circle as well, actually. I think I've had some great coaches in the past, and I've had some awful coaches in the past. And I think they've both been super effective because you know what bad looks like, you know what great looks like. And hopefully you're positioning yourself more towards the good side than the bad side. And I think fresh into it's a little bit like that Dunning-Kruger effect, isn't it? You're kind of up and down. And I think when I first got into it, I did know everything. That was my thoughts. you start to kind of drift away, lose that. Been in a few jobs where I've almost been forced into being a worse coach than I wanted to be, just through, organizational practice. And, not everybody cares about coaching, this monetization, all those things, but then left kind of the full-time role, and have now come back to the reason is I just love to coach and I love to do a good job of coaching. If I'm not doing a good job of coaching, it really kind of twists me up in my head, because we obviously care so much about it. So to not have control over how well you're doing the thing that you care about is kind of hard.
Well, let me flip this back on you. Because you just brought up a big thing that's important to me. What is coaching then? What is coaching? What is coaching to you? This is quickly turning into you had me on your show. Now I'm having you on my show.
Yeah, I love it. Anyway, I love it. No, it's good. It's good. It keeps me on my toes. I think, what is coaching? But I don't even know what the bloody definition of coaching is. That's a good thing, isn't it? But I think for me, the things that I value out of coaching is being able to connect with people, being able to make them better through my experiences and speciality and knowledge. Okay. So I think there's probably an element of that, of me genuinely wanting to help people. But the second one is I need to feel like I am making an impact. I need to feel important. I need to feel like I'm doing good work. It's those two, and that sounds like a really kind of self-centered thing to say, like, I need to feel like I'm doing good work, but you do. Otherwise you'd go to a different career. You'd do something totally different in my eyes, and it's not necessarily I want to win Coach of the Year for the NCAA or anything like that. But I want to know that I've left that session thinking I'm doing good stuff and people are getting better as a result of my passion.
What's funny is some of those things you added there that I didn't even have included in my idea of what coaching is for me. But I think that our industry is so bad at perceiving value with where you work. And some of the best coaches, some of the best coaches you are going to meet are some of your youth coaches. They're your best ones. And so I feel like if you ask, it's so funny. There's a guy that plays pickup basketball with us. And actually, I'm not even going to mention who it is, but there's a few coaches that I look up to or professionals that have worked at a pretty high level in sport. I'll say, why did you get into coaching? And it's quickly because of those things you mentioned. And then it's like, well, not that that's your fault, but in my mind, I'm thinking we've created this problem for ourselves because it's turned into like a race to the bottom amongst strength coaches. It's like, wow, Jordan, you and I are friends. It's almost like we have this thing in a rat race of, well, Jordan is doing, I'm making this up. This is not how I think with our friendship, but you just set up a business called Adapt. You're setting up continuing education. You're doing this. And then it quickly becomes he's doing it. He probably doesn't think what I'm doing is that valuable. Let me try to do something silly. It just turns into this thing where it's like, you're not really doing things because you really love it. You're doing it because you want this gratification from people that really don't care.
Literally, mate, that is such a true thing. Me and my girlfriend were having this discussion yesterday because I was stressing about this encounter that I had with a receptionist who was a little bit moody. And anyway, so I'm stressing about this encounter and she's like, she will not give a fuck. That will not even be that will not have impacted her day in any way, shape or form. But it just kind of brings me back to that thing of we are the hero of our own story, aren't we? We're the center of the universe, but for other people, we're just kind of a passing bit of wind or whatever, bit of wind. We're just somebody that kind of just floats by as and when, and we probably don't give that much thought. I'll occasionally be like, oh, okay, I wonder what so-and-so's up to, but whether they made a good or a bad decision, I care about it. I hope they're doing well, but if they've done something wrong, I'm not gonna stress about it. Yeah, it's deep shots.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, cool. Right. I'm going to wrap this up, mate. So I just want to thank you for your time. Absolutely loved that chat today. And this is definitely going to be one that I will listen. Well, I have to listen back to them all anyway, because I edit them together. But I think I really enjoyed this. And I think we should definitely get a part 2 in at some point, mate, when we get some time. You know, give us a few months. Let's see how your lecturing stuff goes. And we'll get you on again, mate.
No, absolutely. Jordan, enjoyed it. Pleasure to be on. And hope you have a good rest of your day. Let's catch up soon.
Nice one, mate. Thank you.